rovers, particularly. So we're just an amazing number of things we've done, and we've done all of this since October the 4th, 1957, in 60 years. When Sputnik was launched, I was 20 years old, and today I'm 80 years old, and so in one reasonable lifetime, a huge step has been taken, and not only with accomplishments, but with the technology that was required to do it. If one of you young people could create a time machine and come back and find me on the campus of Rice University in 1956 and show me a current smartphone and say, Norm, let me tell you about this phone, and tell me all the things you can do. I can access every library in the world. I've got every pretty girl's phone number in here. I can watch football games, baseball games, TV, whatever. I say, yeah, and I've got a bridge I want to sell you too, or something like that. I could never have conceived of such a device in 1957. And 60 years from now, in 2077, when you guys will be in your late 70s, I guarantee that there will be technologies that you cannot dream of or even imagine today will be available to you. You're already seeing the trends of driverless cars and driverless airplanes, and who knows what's going to come along in the healthcare world and things of that nature. Just so much fun to think about. So, but I think I would almost guarantee that your grandchildren, if not yourselves, will be able to go out. And your elevation here is a little bit higher than Houston, I guess. What are you, a couple thousand feet here? You'd be able to go out on a clear night and look up at a new moon where you just got a sliver of the moon and the rest of the moon is dark. But I don't know if you've ever stood there and studied the moon. If you look real hard, you can see the rest of the moon, and you can see some of the plains and the light areas and the dark areas. It's just not real bright like that part that's sunlit, but you can see them. And so when you go out 60 years from now and look up, I suspect you'll be able to see 1, 2, maybe 3 points of light in the dark area. And that will be human settlements on the moon, and there will be friends of yours, and maybe even you will be at one of those points of light. So every time I come and talk to a group of students like this, I look out and say, wow, that maybe the first Neil Armstrong of Mars is sitting here in Grande, Oregon today, listening to old Norm Chaffee talk about going to the moon for the first time. I can't say, don't know, Neil Armstrong was from a tiny little town called Wapakoneta in Ohio. Whoever would have thought that he'd do what he did. So, or maybe you're not going to be an astronaut, and maybe you won't be the first astronaut. Maybe you will be an astronaut. Maybe you'll turn out to be a flight director, like Gene Kranz in the Apollo 13 movie says, failure is not an option. Or you're going to train astronauts, or you're going to be one of the engineers like I was that helped to design and test the hardware like that. But whatever you do, you're going to have fun. It's going to be exciting, and you will see things happen in your lifetime if we don't blow each other up by that time. That will be absolutely wonderful. Sometimes I think, I wish I could go back and be 18 again. And I think, oh no, I don't think I want to do that. But just to give you an example of the tools that you all have to work with, and if you're in calc, how many of you are taking algebra or trigonometry or first calculus or anything like that, or something in those classes? That's great. So you know how you can apply those mathematical principles to things like that. But you've got a little hand calculator, and I didn't have a hand calculator to do those kind of calculations until 1974, when you could get them for a reasonable price. And the first 4-function calculator I had was a Texas Instruments device. I got it in 1973, and I paid $200 for it in 1973. And it did multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. And now, you know, imagine what you can do with your, if we did exponents and roots and all kinds of things, and you know, and that's on your phone, you know, as well as, but the device I used to get all that done, I brought with me. I brought my smartphone with me from 1953. And I'll, hello? Make sure nobody was calling me. This is called a slide rule. Any of you ever heard of a slide rule? So this does multiplication, division, roots, exponents, that kind of stuff. I still remember how to use it, but I did all my engineering and technical work in high school and college. Yeah, in high school and college, and it's a slide rule because it has a thing in the middle that moves back and forth, and I can do something. If some student has got a calculator, I can say, okay, well, I want you to take as they can, and they'll get a precise answer, and I'll get within 0.1% of the answer. So all of the engineering I did, you know, and that's good enough for most engineering, you know. The stuff I needed when I was working on it that had to be very, very precise, I did on a mainframe computer at the time. But most of the engineering I could do with a slider. So that just shows you how the technology has changed. So the technology and the programs you have available to you are going to allow you to do the kinds of things that I did with much more precision and much more rapidly, and you'll be able to conceive of things to work on that we couldn't even think of. So I like to not only comment on the era from 1957 to today. That's 60 years, but let me back up an era for you. Does everybody know what happened in 1903 at Kitty Hawk in North Carolina in December, where two bicycle mechanics went down there to do something? Well, they were Orville and Wilbur Wright, and they went down there and they built the first heavier-than-air aircraft and actually flew the first powered flight that I think went about 160 feet or something like that. And so from that very first flight, December of 1903, until July of 1969, that's less than 66 years, we went from 150 feet to going to the surface of the moon. An amazing step in 66 years. So just stop and think, you know, 66 years for the Wright brothers, 60 years since Sputnik. Put yourself 60 years in the future, and I just can't imagine the world that you're gonna live in. It's gonna be amazing, and your children will not be able to imagine. How did you know? Why didn't you have television sets in your classes? You know, how come you had to have this big thing on the wall? And, that kind of thing. So I want to do. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to tell you, I came in the very early days of NASA. I worked on the Mercury program with the one astronaut in the can. John Glenn was the first guy in orbit, but the first Russian in orbit was the first human. It was a guy named Yuri Gagarin. Went into orbit about 9 months before John Glenn got in. And I worked on the Mercury, worked on the Gemini program, where we learned how to rendezvous in orbit, how to do precise landing on the Earth. The Apollo program, of course, went to the moon 6 times, that kind of thing. So I've worked on everything. The Apollo Soyuz, where we learned how to work with the Russians, and the Skylab, the first space station, where we had 3 guys up for as long as 90 days, trying to figure out was there long-term effects of space flight. We worked on the very earliest days of the space shuttle, this thing that launched like a rocket, landed like an airplane. I did all of the propulsion systems for all those things, and I brought one to show you from Apollo. But I was one of the chief engineers on the International Space Station. It was my job and me and my team to figure out how many pieces are there, and what order do you put them together? What is the capability as you add each one, and where do you put it so that it doesn't tumble or do something bad? You know, how much power do you need, and how do I add the power, and how many people can I have on there as a function of it as we go along, and how do we get water and food to them, and how do we handle the human waste and all those kind of things. A lot of fun to work on that kind of stuff. So I was beginning to think about going back to the moon permanently and going to Mars permanently at the time that I got shifted over from working on that to being in charge of biomedical engineering. So in my span of working from 1962 to when I retired in 1998, I was a rocket scientist for most of the time, but I was also the senior engineer on the Space Shuttle program, a very senior engineer on the International Space Station program. I was the manager of the robotics organization at the Johnson Space Center, and then deputy manager of the biomedical engineering department. A very broad range of kinds of things. I had a wonderful time. Every time I felt like I knew I was an expert on what I was doing, I knew that now it's time to move on and go find something I don't know anything about and start that again. So, James?
All right. So if you have a question, if you could just stand up, announce who you are, and then your question. We'll try to answer as best we can. Does anyone have a question?
Well, let me go on if there's no...
All right,
okay, yeah.
I'm a sucker. Teacher. Tell us a little bit about Werner von Braun.
Werner von Braun was a very interesting guy. He was a very forceful guy. And he and his team came to the United States. For you youngsters, he was in charge of the German V2 rocket program in the Second World War. The V2 was a weapon. And they fired V2 rockets with very large amounts of high explosives into England from like 43 to the end of the war in 45 from a location in Peenemünde in northern Germany. But as the war began to go badly for the Germans, the Americans and the British and the Canadians invaded at Normandy, and they began pushing into the continent and moving up toward northern Germany. And okay, you're right. But yeah, Werner, yeah, you're right. Werner von Braun said, hey, the Americans are coming this way, the Germans are coming this way. I'm in the middle. You know what? I need to get out of here. So he got his guys together, put everything they could on trucks, their plans, their machines, that kind of stuff, hightailed it to the west and surrendered to the Americans. The Americans said, oh, come with us. We need what you know. So they spirited him into the United States through Mexico. So he was an illegal alien for a while. Went to an Air Force base north of El Paso and started teaching American scientists how to build rockets. And when NASA was started, he was running a major center for the U.S. Army on rockets, and President Eisenhower said, now this center is now going to be called NASA, and Dr. von Braun is going to be the head of it. But he was a very forceful guy, very, very, very smart. I've been in some meetings with him. I've shaken hands with him, and he had no idea who I was, but you could challenge him. I've been in meetings where he would put forth that this is what we must do, And somebody could say, no, Dr. von Braun, that's stupid. We should do this. Oh, no, what you say? So but if you could tell him, you could tell him something, he'd listen to him, and he'd change his mind. But once he got an idea of what he wanted, he was very forceful, and all of the guys he brought with him. I worked with a guy who was a propulsion division chief at the Marshall Space Center in Huntsville, Alabama, and he was a very, very smart guy too. But Ron, unfortunately, didn't live really late. He had a brain tumor and died. But I enjoyed knowing him just briefly. And for people who are into rockets, they say, "Oh, you knew Werner von Braun?" I said, "Well," I said hello to him and shook hands with him, and that's about the end of it. So,
Any other questions?
and I've also, it's been my fortune to also know most of the early astronauts pretty well because of what I did in the early days when I was working on rocket engines. I had my own test facility at the Johnson Space Center, and occasionally we blew something up. And of course, my boss would know immediately, and the director of engineering would know immediately, but it wasn't too long after those guys got informed that an astronaut would be calling up and say, "Hey, Norm, what happened? How are we going to get that fixed?" So they obviously didn't want anything like that going on while they were on board the spacecraft. So one of the things can I talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, you got about 2 minutes.
2 minutes. So this is a 100-pound rocket engine called a thruster from the Apollo program. The Apollo program has a service module, cylindrical thing where they had the fuel cells and the big maneuvering rocket and communication system, and then the lunar module. And the service module had 16 of these, and the lunar module had 16 of these. And these are used not for the launch purposes, but to steer the spacecraft in space. So those of you that have had physics know Newton's law that says a body at rest will stay at rest unless acted upon by a force, and a body in motion will stay in that motion unless acted on by a force that changes it. So if you're a spacecraft and you want to roll, pitch, or yaw, you use this little engine firing a very short little burst. Or if I want to go faster this way, I can fire a little burst and go this way, or go that way, or go up, or go down, or go forward. And you use these 16 things in various combinations to turn wherever you want, point wherever you want, and go wherever you want. But the idea is this thing doesn't turn on and go bang, and it's 100-pound thrust, for 8 minutes or something. This thing is designed to fire for 14 milliseconds. It could fire for an hour, but the shortest it can fire is 14 milliseconds. It uses just a tiny little bit of propellant. Gives you just enough little push to, get you moving and that kind of stuff. When you get where you want to go, you got to give it another to stop, because like Newton says, you'll keep going. These are toxic propellants. The ammonia, the fuel is something like ammonia, very concentrated ammonia. The oxidizer is very concentrated nitric acid. When you squirt them together, you don't need an igniter. As soon as they meet, they burst into flame reaction and make a hot gas that is about 5,500 degrees inside the combustion chamber, and it expands, and you got a 2,000 degree bit of hot gas coming out really fast at about Mach 6 out here. That gives you a little push, So this little that you get, so when you're testing it, you got to do a countdown because it's dangerous and toxic. So you get everything ready, and the instrumentation's all ready, and everything, and you do a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's it. That's 14 milliseconds. And as I try to tell people that I do is not really a 14 milliseconds, because I can't do a 14 milliseconds. Mine is more like 50 milliseconds. So what this thing does is, and depending on how fast you want to go, how fast you need to go, but just using tiny little bits of propellant to go, and then if you need to stop, it over here and stops you in that direction, and this kind of thing. So this is kind of heavy. The combustion chamber is made out of a metal called molybdenum, which is in the periodic table of elements. This thing weighs about 6 pounds. And you wouldn't think of it. This is a cobalt nickel superalloy nozzle. These valves are real fast because they have to open and shut within 14 milliseconds. So I worked on this. This is mine. I was a major NASA engineer on that kind of thing, and so we also use that Okay.
Or
On
they'll,
that,